You're listening to the Adventure Sports Podcast. We talk with adventurers from around the globe to give you the inspiration you need to get started in the outdoors or keep moving if you're already there. Now here's your host, Kurt Linville.
Hey, happy Wednesday to you. I hope your day is fantastic. I can't believe it's already March the 11th. I guess we say that as time flows by. It just seems like it gets faster and faster and faster. But mid-March is sometimes spring skiing in Colorado. Sometimes it has the best snow that we've had all year. And sometimes it's the beginning of mud season. We are drying out early here. People are already mountain biking at Hartman Rocks. And usually it's still buried in snow and mud at this time of the year. So, man, early spring, I'm looking forward to getting out myself on the mountain bike and on the motorcycle. But it's kind of hard for me to shift gears. I was laughing the other day because I was preparing my motorcycle for motorcycle season, which is coming up. I had to replace the clutch cable and, of course, do all the standard maintenance stuff. But the same day, while I was working on the motorcycle, I pulled my skis off the wall and I remounted my ski bindings so that my new ski boots would fit. And I was preparing my skis, get this, for the first day of ski season, for me, that is. And the reason is because, of course, I went to Kilimanjaro and the snow conditions weren't great this year. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to go to Kili and focus on that. I'll worry about skiing when I get back. And then I came back from Kilimanjaro and snow conditions were still not great. And anyway, long story short, my ski season started the same day that my motorcycle season started. And that has never happened before. I'm really curious what you do during the springtime. What are the kinds of outdoor sports that spring calls you to? Maybe it's midday fishing. Maybe it's starting to take some hikes. Maybe it's some other things, but you transition away from your wintertime activities, and it's not quite summer yet. So what do you do on the shoulder season? I think there's a lot of fun to be had out there. So I was listening to another show just today, matter of fact, and the host of that show started down the list, said, okay, if you want to support the show, then go to Patreon. Oh, and I want you to subscribe, and please, while you're there, give us a review. Give us 5 stars. Oh, and make sure that you comment. And, oh, make sure that, you see where I'm headed. It went on and on and on and on. And I thought, I say one thing or maybe another on some episodes, but I just don't get into those constant reminders to do everything for me so that my show can get there. I hope you don't see it that way. I certainly don't see it that way. You know, I often say the number one thing that you can do to support our show is to share it with a friend. If there's an episode that you think will be helpful to someone else, please pass it along. That's a big one for me. But I would love to see more comments, and the reason is because it helps us to make the show better, but it also is a platform where listeners can interact with each other. Another place where you can interact is on our Discord server, and I have to refresh the link from time to time so that people can join that Discord server, but it's just a place where you can text each other and share ideas, and people have been asking questions about, you know, if you're going to do this outdoor thing, where would you do it, or what kind of gear would you recommend? And I would like to see that grow. It's great for the Adventure Sports Podcast family to be able to visit with each other. So I'm going to put the Discord link, the fresh one, whatever it is today, I'm going to put that in the show notes so you can join our Discord server. Today's guest has spent a lifetime helping other people get out into the outdoors and to enjoy the outdoors safely, in addition to just helping people to understand the little things you might not know if you're not accustomed to being out in the woods or out on the river or out on the lake or out in the snow in the wintertime. So he has a lifetime of doing this stuff. And man, I felt just a kindred spirit with him and really, really enjoyed meeting Jeffery Swaze. So that's enough of me talking. Let's dive into the episode. Hi, friends. I'm excited about this episode. I have Jeff Swaze with us. He is an outdoor nature advocate. I can tell just by the brief conversation we just had. And so he's a man after my own heart. He knows what a positive difference encountering nature can have. And he has been a guide for years and years and years, still does guiding. He's also a mental health and wellness counselor. So he understands how positive the impact can be that nature can provide. And we're going to talk about things like mountaineering, rock and ice guiding, fly fishing guiding. I mean, he's the outdoorsman in New Hampshire. Jeff, welcome to the program.
Thanks a lot for having me. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. And after listening to the podcast for about a year, I'm just really happy to be talking to you.
You're kind of living my dream job, Jeff. Tell people what you just told me about your current arrangement for guiding.
I am a licensed New Hampshire fishing and outdoor recreation guide, which is pretty all-encompassing. So I used to be a rock, ice, and mountaineering guide, but I don't do the technical rock and ice climbing anymore like I used to. So what I do is I work through a local hotel and I teach people how to fly fish. I teach people how to travel safely in the mountains. I take them snowshoeing. We may do some winter tracking. So really it's a great way to incorporate my love of the outdoors and teaching outdoor skills and engaging people with adventure, maybe for the first time. It's a great arrangement to have.
Yeah, it sounds fantastic. And you were just telling me you don't have a big online presence because you get all the clients you need through your arrangement with this hotel, which is also nice. You don't have to sweat the details, so to speak.
Yeah, what's really cool about that is the clients will go to the hotel and the hotel has, they call experiences. I've traveled to the hotels in the Adirondacks and all over, and you might go to their website and you see, oh, we have this experience or that experience. And for a lot of these people, we were talking about this earlier, they're from suburban areas or major metropolitan areas that are within 3 or 4 hours of the Mount Washington Valley in New Hampshire, where I live. But we're surrounded by this really big wilderness area with a lot of remote backcountry areas that for a lot of people, they just wouldn't think about accessing it on their own. And they're staying at a hotel and they might say, oh, it'd be really cool to try snowshoeing. I think I'm up for that. Or I saw somebody fly fishing the other day in the river and that just looked really cool. I could be into that. Or I would like to hike up Sugarloaf 1, which is a mountain we have here, which is a really popular sort of like moderately steep, easily accessible hike. But I don't want to do it on my own. I want to learn something about hiking, how to dress properly, how to layer, moisture management in the winter, things like that. So, and I like being with people, especially being with people outside. And I'm passionate about, and beginners to advanced.
That's so fun. I don't do much in the way of taking new people into the woods anymore, but I spent a lot of time doing that in my life, and I found it so rewarding. And I could never get bored in nature. But when you see someone encountering it for maybe the first time, and their enthusiasm is contagious, and it just kind of brings it back to life all over again.
So contagious. And in the outdoor space, there's a lot of people, especially nowadays, and there are a lot of experienced, advanced people and a lot of people who may spend time on social media and they see a type of way to do something and they may think, oh, in order to do this, this has to be, really intense or really epic. But then it really helps to sort of diffuse that and say, anybody can do this. Everybody was a beginner once. When I first started fly fishing or rock climbing, I was a total hack. And it feels hard to ask people how to do something, but once you do and you bring them into it, like you said, when you see their enthusiasm, it really is contagious. Like if you could bottle that would be awesome.
Yeah, you'd be a billionaire selling that stuff.
You would.
Yeah, that's amazing. And what's so crazy about it is that nature doesn't have to be expensive. It's just a matter of going out into nature and encountering it. And it's just such a beautiful opportunity for people. And many people just don't know. They haven't
Yeah.
experienced it yet.
I think that's a really prescient point right now, because my local REI is just minutes away from me, and it's great. And I like being able to go there, and some days I'll just go walk around REI before I'm meeting my wife in town for dinner just to do something. But the cost of entry in outdoor sports for a lot of people, if they think they need a certain amount of equipment or certain types of equipment, it's prohibitive. But, the one good thing about guiding or having a resource behind you is having equipment or introducing people to safe ways to dress and equip themselves for not a lot of money.
Yeah.
And as I tell people, trail running is not very expensive. I mean, in some sense, it's kind of like the original outdoor adventure sport. Like, at some point, like, we're all running outdoors.
It seems like that is true, very much so. And you and I are of a similar age, Jeff. I remember the world before Gore-Tex.
Me too. You probably remember when Patagonia, which was then maybe Great Pacific Iron Works, came out with their H2No rain jacket. It was this almost like bulletproof armored vest of a rain jacket that my father bought me for my 18th birthday, which was part of his gift to me, which set off a lot of life of adventure, was a 30-day Colorado Outward Bound course. So he bought me this rain jacket, and he made me stand outside in the backyard, and he turned the hose on, and he just hosed me down in this new Patagonia. And it wasn't Gore-Tex, it wasn't breathable, but somehow I survived 30 days in Colorado without being well ventilated. So you're right.
Well,
I remember the world before Gore-Tex and freeze-dried meals.
A lot of the modern outdoor equipment really is nice. It's very, very convenient. It's comforting. It can enhance your safety. But I just have to go back to my roots and say, you can do it without it,
Yeah, it's true. When I wish I had my very first Kelty external frame pack.
Oh, yeah.
Because I would line it up next to sort of like, it'd almost be like the evolution of man. It'd be like the evolution of my backpacks. It was this massive like Kelty frame pack. Like, I traveled everywhere with it. My dad and I, we brought it to Africa. And I can't believe, with the exception of being on Kili, I lugged that thing around everywhere in Africa. And then on Kili, having to watch the porters carry it on their head, I had this kind of really weird feeling about, wow, this is what they're doing. This is what they want to be doing. But just there was this awkward thing I felt. I can't really quite describe it. It just felt like this very interesting relationship at the time. But by the end of the trip, the Chaga tribesmen who were guiding us on this guide were like, we loved carrying your frame pack.
You may or may not know that I just got back from Kili a week ago.
I do.
I just had that same experience.
I heard. I listened to part of the last podcast, and I meant to say that in the beginning and forgot. But congrats on what in your mind was a successful trip.
Well, congratulations to you too. It's an amazing life experience. I'll say that. Amazing life experience. Yeah. I'm still trying to wrap around it. But let's get back to New Hampshire. You mentioned that adventure fuels the connection to nature. And, we're the Adventure Sports Podcast, but it's all about nature. But a lot of people do adventure without nature. But what do you mean by that adventure fuels the connection to nature?
I think that there's this real deep hunger inside of people to connect to something bigger than themselves. And, when you're adventuring in nature, the wilderness, whether it's trail running, hiking, bird watching, it doesn't really matter what the activity is. The rest of the chatter inside of your head goes quiet. And you're really mindfully focused. Even, you might not have the language to name it that way, but that's what's happening. Like, on a physiological level, your cortisol level is dropping. You're literally physiologically connecting with the very place that you come from, like, which is wild in nature. So I think that when we're moving our bodies through the wilderness, it's something that really taps into something very primitive, something that we're meant to do, I think, born to do. And, that demand to focus is, I'm sure because I've heard you talk about mountain biking, that demand to focus it's like you enter this flow zone, and it fuels a deeper connection to nature because you really become part of it. You're not necessarily looking at it through a bubble saying, oh, it's out there. We almost always refer to nature as it's something that's out there because we're in here. But what if nature, the wilderness, the mountains, whatever environment you live in, what if that was really our natural home?
I think it is.
Yeah.
But there's a transition that people go through as they start encountering nature. It seems foreign at first, but at some point, it almost feels more like home than your house. It is for me.
Yeah, that's well said. And I totally relate to that, to the point where a lot of times when I come back from a trip, I can't unpack. Like I can't really explain it. Drives my wife crazy, but I just don't unpack. It almost feels like I should be ready for the next trip, like immediately.
Yeah.
It's almost like I've never left.
I'm going to get back to this because it was a way that I really liked to do it. But I used to have a ready pack that had everything in it that I needed except for food and clothes. And so when I was ready to go, I could just grab it, get some food, get a change of clothes, and I was out the door. And I never had to worry about where everything was, getting everything organized and getting it all in the pack and all that kind of stuff. And I really encourage people to think about it that way. Maybe don't unpack. Maybe have a pack that's ready to go, because that just invites you.
That's really cool you should say that, because one of the things that, I do it in the first day of the Wilderness Skills 101 is how to build the right day pack for your environment. What should you put in it? Some people may want to carry an inReach. Some people may not need to. Some people may not know how to use a paper map and compass. Well, we could work on that. Some people may need lots of heavy layers for the winter, but you're always going to need water. You're always going to need some snacks.
Right.
What you put in your go bag is really going to be different for your environment. So yeah, it's cool that you mentioned that, because having a go bag, I think, it just makes it so much easier, right?
Oh, it does.
You don't have to think about it. You're like, oh, this isn't hard. All I have to do is, I got an hour free. I can just grab my pack and throw it in the vehicle and go.
I can feel your passion for this, and it's a passion that we share. But people that haven't experienced it, why would you say it's worthwhile? I mean, what is the why that might get someone out the door who's never thought about going into the woods and facing the unknown, so to speak?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think the first reason has to do with something you said at the end there, which is fear of the unknown. And, as I'm looking around my house now, a lot of things in my house are designed for my comfort, which is great. But a lot of things in the wilderness, in the mountains, on the water are not intentionally designed for our comfort. And so when we encounter an unknown environment, I think that's really good for us, because I think our brains lay down a lot of rich footage. There isn't a lot of firsts that we wouldn't encounter in life at some point unless we got outside of our comfort zone.
Yeah.
So there's that. I think encountering the fear of the unknown does have a corresponding value to other areas of life. So being outside demands a little bit of hardiness and grit. Resilience is the outcome, being a more resilient person, but developing that hardiness means that, well, I'm going to get bitten by bugs, but I can do a little bit about that. I'm going to be uncomfortable. There's going to be wind, rain, cold, snow, and it forces us to adapt. And I often find that the most kind, flexible, and gritty people are people who approach unknowns, whether it's having a conversation with a stranger in public, which I do every day because I just think that's a good thing to do.
Yeah.
because it stings. Going outside may be really difficult for somebody at the first time they do it, but I think the rewards and the benefits are lifelong. There's a very big mental reward, but there's also a really good. You'll find that your body is capable of doing really beautiful things when you get out in the outdoors and you move your body, and it may feel difficult. It's you come back from doing something, even if it's a 2-mile walk. Maybe you've never done that before. Maybe getting out of the car and just finding the trailhead is an achievement for some people, but they're going to come back and feel like a badass. And I think that is going to help them feel like they have more agency in everyday life. So that may be a longer answer to your question, but I'm thinking on my feet as I go along. I'm trying to put myself in the position of a newbie, but I don't know. I'm still excited. Every time I go fishing, I still run down to the bank. And I know I shouldn't, because I know I'm scaring a lot of the fish. But I just can't help myself.
Years ago, I used to take middle school kids into the wilderness for a week-long experience.
Oh, cool.
And these inner city kids, some of them had been in nature a little bit. Some of them never had. They'd never been out of the concrete jungle. And we would take them up into the mountains. It was just kind of fascinating to watch how that impacted different people in different ways. Some of these kids just absolutely fell in love with it, and they said, oh, this is what I was made for. And you could see them just take off, just connecting with nature and wanting more and more and more of that experience. We had other kids, though, that being removed from all of the distractions that they had built around themselves for survival in the inner city, right? Being removed from that and placed into an environment that was so foreign. I mean, even just not having the stereo to play the music they're used to. That music had a purpose for them. It wasn't just entertainment. Some of them would come unglued. I watched kids really have some strong cognitive dissonant crises, maybe might be one label for it, because they're encountering something so brand new. But I still think it pulled them out of something to experience something. And hopefully the end result of that is a better awareness, self-awareness, awareness of the world. But it was amazing. It really was amazing. And I would encourage anybody who maybe hasn't been in nature, listen to what Jeff is saying. There's something there for everybody, and it can be life-altering. It really can.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Watching somebody, I've been in really difficult positions with people who, well, from their estimation, rock climbing for the first time.
Oh, yeah.
Or being in a canoe in a river for the first time, or spending their first night outside without any type of light, or, as you mentioned, noise. You're right. It's almost as if they had a kind of, they delaminated a little bit, and their brains went offline for a little bit. And then, trying to sort of bring them back, to a more manageable level, reducing that anxiety is also fun to watch. Because, a lot of adventure athletes have utilized, whether they know it or not, just, good breath work to calm themselves down and other things. But, yeah, watching somebody sort of, for lack of a better term, just like absolutely freak out because they're in this new environment. There's no noise, or at least there's no noise that they're used to.
Right, yeah.
Same way I feel if I have to take a subway somewhere in a city.
That's a good point, Jeff. I've told this story before, but I'm going to share it just because I found it's just such an amazing experience. We took a group of about a dozen teenagers on a backpacking trip. We went into the Colorado wilderness. We're up at about 11,000 feet, and it gets dark. We're camping with these precipitous peaks all around us. And these teenagers, they were city kids. They were nervous. They were out of their element. So what do teenagers do when they're nervous? They joke and they laugh and they carry on and make a lot of noise. And I mean, it was not a nature experience at that point. So I finally just said, okay, everybody, let's separate into small groups, walk away from camp just a little bit, sit down and just try to be quiet for like 5 minutes. Don't say a word. And of course, it was so uncomfortable that there was a lot of giggles and laughs, and it was hard for them. But here's the crazy thing: the reward was that the crags above us, at a distance were starting to freeze. And as they froze, it triggered rock slides. And so the kids were sitting under the open sky, looking at the stars, listening to boulders come charging down these craggy slopes and crashing into the valley. And their eyes get so wide open, and they suddenly connect with something. They realize this is something special. And it was special. I mean, it impacted me. I'm still talking about it, 30 years later, right? Have you ever gone through all the hassles of getting on the plane, security, luggage, long waits at the airport, all that kind of stuff? And then when you finally arrive at your destination, not only are you worn out, but you also might feel a little bit disconnected. I know that I do when I hopscotch around the planet on a plane. That's one of the reasons why I love the great American road trips, where you get to drive from one place to another and connect all of those dots. You get to experience the changes in the terrain and the weather and the people and the communities. This is one reason that I am excited to present to you our new sponsor, Outdoorsy. Outdoorsy offers a different way to travel. With Outdoorsy, you can rent an RV or a camper and turn the drive into part of the vacation on your schedule with your people and with way more flexibility. Listen, most trips focus on getting somewhere. Outdoorsy is about the part in between. With Outdoorsy, you can rent an RV or a camper and travel on your own terms. No TSA lines, no strict schedules, no rushing through airports. And for extra convenience, Outdoorsy even offers RV delivery and setup in many locations, so you can enjoy the experience without having to worry about the logistics. Outdoorsy connects travelers with trusted RV owners across the country, making it easy to find a rig that fits your style and budget, and I might add, that also fits with the people and the pets that you want to take with you. So when you're ready for a trip that actually feels like a break, head to Outdoorsy.com. Outdoorsy is currently running a special promotion for listeners. Use the promo code ASP at checkout to take advantage of this limited time offer. That's Outdoorsy.com, promo code ASP. So as a mental health and wellness counselor, why do those experiences make a difference? How do they help us?
I think the first way they help us is they teach our brains that any anxiety we have, either in that moment or otherwise, is kind of a liar. Is that when we're feeling anxious, or maybe we're experiencing something in our life where we might define it as a mental health crisis. Although I think crisis is a term that gets thrown around too easily now.
Sure, yeah.
Because people talk about, I have anxiety, rather than I'm feeling anxious. Now, those may sound the same, but there's a different way our brain responds. One is, oh, this is just temporary and human.
Right.
The other is, oh, I have something. And so I think that when we're doing something that increases dopamine, endorphins naturally,
yes,
that is one of the best ways to suppress, overcome, and develop management for just sort of everyday stress and anxiety. And it just builds really good coping mechanisms for other areas of life, because it turns down the amplitude. Like a lot of times we might be overanalyzing something or problem that isn't really a problem, because there's so much messaging, I think, often where there's this culture of harm in everyday life, where you always feel like, oh, you go somewhere and you always feel like I could be very easily harmed. I shouldn't do this, or I shouldn't eat that, or I shouldn't say this, or I shouldn't read that, or this is going to be dangerous. And I think that our brains will create a narrative around something we feel, and it might not even be accurate.
Right.
So, getting outside and getting robustly involved in adventure activities, or just being in nature. I think that being outside and the mindset we apply to it will make it adventure. I mean, I think as humans, we're meant to walk long distances, and a lot of people don't have to do this now, but hunt down prey and like avoid things that might want to incorporate us into the food chain as well. So,
Yes.
Whether that be a tick or a mosquito or, a rushing rapid, like just learning how to manage those things, I think is a really great way to improve mental health and wellness, because you're earning your dopamine. You're getting out there, and sure, there's some risks involved, bad knees, broken bones, things like that. But all those things I think can be mitigated.
That's beautiful. I was lucky enough to overhear a mountain biking coach talking to one of the students on a ride one day, and he was talking about experiencing near crippling anxiety. And he said it's like you're going up rungs of a ladder, and the higher you go, the more dangerous it gets, and the more wrapped around the axle you get, and the harder it is to see clearly. And he just encouraged her. He said, find the thing that allows you to come back down a rung or a two on that ladder. Instead of worrying about the ladder, worrying about the fall, worrying about where what kind of things will help you to step down a rung or two on that ladder. And that's what nature does for me.
Man, I like that. That's such a good idea. I mean, I may incorporate that and use that.
Sure.
That analogy is so good, because if somebody is feeling anxious, whether it's about an event, or I do a lot of public speaking, which I actually like. I like the excitement that comes with it. And, when you talk about anxiety, there's a different way, language too. Excitement versus anxiety. I think a lot of times we confuse them both.
Yeah.
And you're right. I like that. I often teach people to practice a pause. At some point, whether you're facing something difficult or insurmountable, you're going to have a thought or sensation. It doesn't matter which comes first, but allowing that thought or sensation to exist at the same time that you do what you have to do is teaching your brain that you're not going to stop doing what you need to do just because you're feeling a certain way. Like,
yeah,
you can experience this, but I love that analogy of like getting back down to a lower rung. It's like intervening at the earliest possible level, being like, all right. And, for a lot of people that I take outside for the first time, they have a lot of judgments about things where I've heard this is going to be really hard, or I'm really afraid of this.
Yeah.
Or what if this happens? People will pile up the what ifs like they're seat cushions. And before you know, like, well, what if I get bit by this? What if this happens? What if that happens? Well, what if it all works out? Those things might happen, but those what ifs is about sort of realizing that judgments are just judgments about that experience. That's all they are. They're not good or bad. They just are. I tell people it's not the anxiety that's bothering you. It's your judgment. It's your assessment of the anxiety.
Yeah.
That's actually bothering you.
Well, that's a little bit meta. Let me go meta just a little bit more. It wasn't just what the coach told the mountain biking student that I loved. It was that we were in an environment where it was comfortable to have that conversation because we were on mountain bikes in nature. There's something about a walk, a hike, being outside. People begin to share. They begin to explore a little bit of, wow, what really happened last week? What was that about? Because they're giving themselves space. I just feel like there's something so powerful about nature as a place to heal.
Absolutely. And I feel like if they could just sort of encapsulate that would be like the best advertisement for you as an adventure-based counselor. Just saying, because the way you said that was perfect. Things that people will share around a campfire or on a mountain bike or on the side of a cliff or an hour into a hike.
Yeah.
I've done multi-day trips with people I've never met before until the day I arrive. And that's a whole other experience.
Oh, yeah.
And leaving those trips as friends for life
Sure.
was really altering. So you're really right about the space, because I can have a student at the college I work at sit in my office and we're not going to get anywhere. We're just not, because I think it's a really intimidating environment for a lot of people.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But if I say, hey, there's a trail right out back, or if you're really up for it, and this is where being a licensed guide dovetails nicely with my job, I could put that person in a canoe. I can say, hey, if you're up for it, we can go for a trail run, or there's some birds I've never heard before outside, and here's some binoculars. So let's just go, whatever. Some of the students are really up for it, and then they want to plan day-long hikes, like day-long outings with groups. And that's the session.
That's exciting.
It is. It really is.
So cool. Jeff, you have guided rock and ice climbing and mountaineering and fly fishing and I'm sure a plethora of other things. So just for fun, if I name the activity, can you give us a few bullet points on why this is a good activity for some people, what people could expect out of it and what you love about it?
You bet.
Okay, well, let's start. We've already talked quite a lot about just hiking.
Yeah.
We touched on fly fishing, but let's just start with fly fishing. Why is that an activity that calls to people or can have benefits?
Well, there's water. So, anytime you're in, on, or around water, it's just a relaxing environment. It's very calming. And then there's the act of fly fishing. I mean, I do traditional fishing as well, and I guide conventional fishermen, but the learning curve to fly casting is pretty steep.
Yeah,
it's not easy to learn how to fly cast. But in the process of learning how to fly cast, you're really learning this very mindful movement. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned transition points in, being outside, and in fly fishing, there's this transition point when you go from totally sucking with your cast to getting it and laying down a good cast. And it feels so good. Like in your body, it registers on a physiological level when you nail a good cast. When you're learning how to cast, you're going to bring the rod up, accelerate quickly, then come to a rapid stop. The line on a fly rod is very heavy, so it's meant to load the rod. And then you move the rod forward and it shoots that line out. So there's a kind of a 10-to-2 motion of the fly rod that's very mindful and very repetitive. And people get lost in that. And,
yes.
When we're teaching casting and we get on the water, they're like, I just totally forgot that we were fishing. So I think that's one way that fly fishing could, really attract certain people. It's a very mindful exercise. And you could do it alone.
Yeah, what you just described about casting, line casting. If you fight it, you won't win. And that's maybe the point. You have to be so patient with yourself, and you have to find the rhythm and go with what the line requires. Not what you want it to do, but what the line requires, and it's magical. Yeah,
it is. It is magical when you put a fly rod in somebody's hand. At first, they're looking at this. Most fly rods are 8.5 to 9 feet long. They're just like this big wand in their hand. They don't really, it feels awkward.
Yeah.
But then once they pick up that rhythm, once that clicks, and it's different for everybody, but with fly casting, you pretty much have to, you're going to progress from disbelief to anger to self-loathing to everything. But once you get it, and you lay that line down on the water without a lot of splash, man, as you said, it's really magical. It's so cool.
Wow, that was a very good explanation on fly fishing. What about ice climbing?
Ice climbing is like you're on water. It's just the medium's not moving as fast as a river is. But it's this really dynamic environment. And there's a lot of physical focus and vigor that's involved, but there's low-angle ice climbings that even people could do on a top rope, and they can do it safely. And it's just very cathartic. Again, with ice climbing, at first people are going to take their ice tools, which you talk about progression of gear. When I first started ice climbing, we had straight shafted ice tools, and everybody used a sling for their wrist. Now all ice tools are leashless, and that's where equipment has really made a difference in entry level. But ice climbing, it just feels good, man. When you stick that ice pick, and you could feel the ice when it's solid. Like when you drive an ice tool home, and it's a really good placement, you can just feel it. It's like you could hang off that thing. Some people do, but it feels so good to do that, and also gets you outside in the winter.
Yeah, very important. A lot of people hide from nature in the wintertime. And where we live, Gunnison, I looked this up, from fall to spring, Gunnison, Colorado, is the coldest average temperature in the nation.
Seriously?
Yeah, except for Alaska. So
yeah, I got you.
Except for Alaska, from fall to spring. If you do year round, then there's some other cities, towns that they battle for first place. But the point is that we have like the coldest winters around. And when people move to our valley, they move here because it's a beautiful natural place. So many opportunities. We call it the base camp of the Rockies for a reason. You can do anything from here. But I just tell them, find your winter sport and do it. Because if you hide in your house all winter long, you're going to leave this valley. You're going to move on. It's too punishing.
That's great advice. Winters here could be, right now we're in a slight uptick in temperatures, but last week we were -14, -15 at night without wind chill. And, those are the days I remember being out on Mount Washington or maybe being called out for a rescue. And that's extreme winter temperatures. But on average, if you can move here and not like winter, but engaging winter and liking winter at some point is going to become mandatory to sort of to be here.
So ice climbing is a great winter sport. What are some others that you would recommend for people so that they can get out and feel good about life?
Easiest way to get outside in the winter, I think, is snowshoeing. It's not expensive. You can access the backcountry pretty easily. You can go on trail. If you're not comfortable being in the backcountry, there are Nordic centers that have snowshoeing trails in the center, so you can be outside in the winter, moving your body. So snowshoeing, I think, is a great way to access the backcountry in the winter because you can tweak your kit. You're going to have to layer. You're going to have to think about moisture management, hydration requirements. It's a great way to really sort of up your winter game and figuring out, okay, I can be in the backcountry. I can get outside in winter in the snowshoes, and it's really physical. And the more off trail you go, the more physical it becomes. So it can be as easy as you want, or it can be as difficult as you want. You can pull a sled behind you with 3 or 5 days worth of gear, do some winter camping or hot tent camping, and access backcountry on snowshoeing. But really, for somebody who really wants to experience winter and they don't want to shell out for a ski pass or even a day lift ticket, snowshoeing is the way to go. I couldn't recommend it enough.
Very cool. You mentioned moisture management, and that's like top rule number one in the wintertime. So explain what you mean by that.
So a lot of thinking on how people run into heat and cold emergencies in the outdoors. In the winter, you often hear people talk about frostbite. And really it's about moisture management, because if you overheat and you don't stay dry and then you happen to stop, if it's a windy day, all that sweat is now going to dry on your skin and you're going to get cold really quickly. And the early stages of hypothermia are really interesting because they almost render you unable to recognize what's happening. Doesn't it? You're almost like, you get the mumbles, the stumbles, the fumbles, and you just think that you're sort of like, yeah, I'm really cold, but that's all sort of moisture management. And in the winter, another part of that is your thirst response is diminished because it's winter. So oftentimes people aren't drinking a lot, and getting back to snowshoeing, if you're staying dry, I mean, you can overheat, but you can regulate your body by wearing layers. I always carry a dry base layer top in my pack with me in the winter. It's mandatory, because if your next to skin base layer gets totally soaked going uphill, I just as soon dump that and put on a dry layer. So moisture management, for my years of living up here and being on official rescue teams and also going out after people in my own friend group, I can tell you that usually a lot of it has come down to not one thing, but hypothermia has always played a role in that.
Yeah.
In the winter.
Hypothermia is, well, people ask what makes nature dangerous, and I really think it is weather more than anything else. You don't have to worry about the wild animals. You don't have to worry about, the weather is what gets you.
Man, that's a perfect description, because when my sons were younger and I would take them out and do all these crazy things, people would say, well, aren't you worried about X, Y, and Z? And I would say, well, there's some things that don't merit concern, like wild animals outside, like bears or coyotes or large megafauna, things that we have here don't merit concern. The small things, I mean, I kind of feel like whoever said don't sweat the small stuff never went outside in the mountains.
Right.
Ever. Because now ticks merit concern.
Yeah.
For me, I'm very, very proactive about preventing that for my kids. Water in the winter, ice, being on ice, like ice fishing or in canoes, those merit some concern.
Okay, next sport, rock climbing.
Great way to move your body. And I know that sounds oversimplified, but even if you're just bouldering, like going to a rock and trying to move your body over a rock close to ground where, if you came off, you wouldn't get hurt, kind of thinking through the moves and moving your body. When you see somebody who's a really good rock climber, it's almost like water running uphill. Like it's just, there's this movement involved and it seems effortless, but it's a great way of confronting the unknown, because everybody has an innate fear of heights. Some people just learn to manage that more than others. Man, it's really a 3-season sport, and in some parts of the country it's a 4-season sport. There's so many ways to learn safely, so many knowledgeable and certified guides now. And it's not an instantaneous adrenaline hit, which would be something like, maybe like surfing or jumping out of a plane, but there's this long adrenaline burn required of the focus and the confidence level that you get from climbing.
Oh, yeah.
I remember in high school seeing maybe a little younger than high school, my dad had a book on the coffee table called Mountains, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I just saw all these people in these cool places doing these things, and I wanted to do them too. And one of them was mountaineering and climbing. Is kind of like a tall, gangly, skinny kid. I didn't excel at football, didn't play team sports, but when I went rock climbing, I discovered my body was capable of something really beautiful and cool, which was climbing. And my body was perfectly suited to moving uphill in the mountains. And once I discovered that, it just gave me so much more confidence in other areas of life. So I think, rock climbing, which is entry-level price, is cheaper now than it's ever have been. The movement feels really good.
I interviewed a fellow who was a bodybuilder, and he was really good at lifting heavy things. And then one of his friends took him to a climbing gym and said, try this. And he realized he had muscles that didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
He quit bodybuilding and became a rock climber because he said, I wanted useful muscles. I wanted to have a body that did things. And he just loved it for that reason.
Yeah. The ethos of climbing has changed where, when I was climbing in this climbing community sort of, during the 90s, there was a lot of emphasis on not just climbing, but the type of route you were doing. Was it a traditional route where you placed your own gear? Was it a bolted route? And, a lot of those ethical arguments and subcultures are always going to happen. But in terms of like the pure joy of the sport, I don't think that matters. Once you get over that, because you're going to fall when you rock climb. You're going to fall at some point. You're going to either take a leader fall if you're comfortable leading, or you're going to fall when you're being belayed by somebody. If it's on a multi-pitch climb, you're going to fall.
Yeah.
And once that happens, you're going to feel so much better about things. Like, oh, okay, that's it. Rope stretch, great harnesses. I mean, the gear is really, when done safely, I think rock climbing is probably statistically it's safer than driving a car.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, much safer than driving a car. Okay, what about mountaineering? Getting to the top of big things.
There's definitely a real feeling of accomplishment on being on top of a mountain and standing there knowing exactly what it took to get from wherever you started, trailhead, car, to the top. But it's hard to describe that feeling. It's just such a feeling of accomplishment. Sometimes for me, it's been a feeling of, man, I just really got away with one, and that's never going to happen again. And that's happened to me a couple of times. But getting up, as Ed Viester said, like, you're only halfway done. Getting down, getting up is optional. Getting down is mandatory. And later in my climbing career, I really tried to remember that because I had a really bad climbing accident, and I made a full recovery, but it really impacted my ability to get out there right away. Yeah, mountaineering can encompass so many things. Glacier travel, traveling on snow safely. There's a whole idea you become, I think, tuned into avalanche awareness. Being acutely aware of your environment is really important in mountaineering. Mm-hmm. Conditions change. I think learning how to adapt, scrub a plan if you need to. You're really not in charge of the weather. I mean, you're in charge of your own actions and decisions. I think that alone is a great place to be. I distinctly remember during my Outward Bound course, we climbed Mount Elbert.
Sure.
And the feeling was absolutely incredible. And on the way down, the feeling was like doubly incredible because I had no idea about the way storms move through Colorado as quickly as they do.
Yeah.
And experiencing lightning and weather hazards. But yeah, I think that the sense of accomplishment, but more than that, knowing exactly what you had to do, what it took, the planning, the preparation, stages of grief you may have gone through, getting up, the people you were with. Yeah, it's just, I can't recommend it enough.
Just as an aside, you mentioned Elbert. I climbed it in the first half of December, and the temperatures were single digit. The wind was so strong. It was the highest wind I'd ever experienced up to that point in my life. And so my buddy and I summited and came back down, had a glorious time, and had so many stories to share. And then another climbing friend of ours said, well, you've still not done a winter ascent. Because it was the first half of December instead of after the solstice. It was truly winter climbing, but that has its own reward.
No, I hear what you're saying. Once I did a presidential range traverse, which is here in New Hampshire in the White Mountains. The Prezi Traverse, as we call it, it's sort of a test piece or a benchmark of living here and being here, of basically climbing up and then traversing all the mountains in the presidential range in a day. Or it doesn't even have to be in a day, but usually the benchmark is under 24 hours. Wow. And the hardest time I've ever had is in November. It was actually Thanksgiving. We were in snowdrifts up to our waist on a mountain called Guyot before we got to the Bond Cliffs. And anybody listening to this from New Hampshire or who's done the Prezi Traverse and the Pemi Loop will know specifically about that area that I'm talking about. But in the middle of winter in a Prezi Traverse, I've also had the best conditions. Like the other day, I went out for a hike and it was 19 degrees, light and variable winds. The snow was like walking up cork. Micro spikes and crampons were just gripping perfectly. There were no obstacles in the trail because the trail had been so packed down. And you're not going through that sort of like endless vertical rise and fall in the summer of like a lot of
Yeah.
trails where like you're stepping up on a rock, then you're stepping back down. It's just perfect winter hiking conditions. And I got back down to the truck and I'm like, that was just easy and kind and fast. And tomorrow it may not be that way.
You never know. You never know. Well, I love, like I said earlier, your passion for the outdoors. And I love the way that you introduce other people to do it. I know you're not trying to push your guiding service, but if people wanted to catch up with you, how could they do that?
They could find me at, I think my phone number is probably in the show notes. Text me, Fishboy Guiding. My email is jefferyswaze1@gmail.com. I'm on the New Hampshire State Fish and Game website, so they can find me there. Or if they're in the area, they can, book a guided experience through the Mount Washington Hotel where I work.
Nice. Will you wrap us up with an anecdote, a story about just something that happened in nature that you thought was just truly special that you're so glad you experienced?
I'm going to say being on Kilimanjaro with my father. And if you had asked me, prior to August of this year, he was 92, he died, so not a tragedy, but he lived a great, full, adventurous life, really inspired a life of adventure for me. There are just so many. I could say, well, I soloed this route, or I, did a remote canoe experience in the backcountry. But I think being on Kilimanjaro with my dad, because when I heard your sort of quick, just, back from Kili, talking about it, it kind of like made me go back through my trip. We did the Marengo route. We went from the Marengo gate. We stayed in huts along the way. But I remember being in the Kibo hut, which is the last hut before you summit the next day. It's like, it's 15 and change.
Yeah.
And just kind of like being there with my dad. I think he didn't get to summit because he didn't feel good the next day. So I summited, but just being on the summit of Kilimanjaro and looking around and just kind of thinking, I remember as a kid, my dad wanted to go to Africa because he gave me the book, The Snows of Kilimanjaro.
Yeah.
And I just remember that, like, some quote about, summit breaking through the clouds and it being there before him, big and wide and unbelievably white in the sun. That just something merged then. And, that was in 1990 that we did Kili. So it was a while ago. But that just feels like it was yesterday. And so that's probably the biggest anecdote that comes to mind. The second is just never stop moving. Just being outside in nature, engaging in adventure. There's always something that you can do outside. We're not making any more wilderness.
No.
We're not making any more. And I think it's really important that people have, free, accessible public wilderness to go outside and recreate in.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I have noted as I watch outdoors people here in the valley who are aging, they can go do things remarkable at ages you wouldn't expect, as long as they never quit moving.
Yeah,
But the day you quit moving is the day that you start losing the ability to do it.
Yeah, and a lot of it is just the brain doesn't stay pliable. It like just a refusal to stop moving and getting outside. And I often think that, like, I don't think I'd, sort of like trade my 62-year-old mind for my 32-year-old body.
Yeah.
That's the best way I could put it, because just I miss part of that. But if you keep moving, I don't think you're going to notice a lot of decline at all, really.
That's one of the beautiful things about nature and getting outside, is it's something you can do for a lifetime.
Absolutely.
Truly for a lifetime.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks, Jeff. I really appreciated our conversation. I love the way that you advocate for people getting out there and doing the thing. It's encouraging to me, and I think that what you are promoting is extraordinarily worthwhile, so thank you for what you're doing.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it, and I appreciate you being able to talk about your Kili trip and having me on your podcast. That was a lot of fun for me.
Well, good. I love it. Everyone, I say this every show, get out there and have some fun, but boy, Jeff probably gave us 57 or 100 reasons that we should be getting out there and having some fun. So anyway, until the next show, make sure that you do get out there and have some fun.